Good afternoon, and welcome to today's IABC Heritage Region webinar, Seeking Professional Certification. My name is Greg McCormick, and I'm Communication Chair for the IABC Heritage Region. We've enjoyed bringing you monthly webinars focused on trends and best practices in the communication profession. This month's session focuses on a distinct way to demonstrate your value by becoming certified. Options include becoming a Communication Management Professional, or CMP, or Strategic Communication Management Professional, SCMP. Our presenter today is Deb Hileman, SCMP, a member of the IABC International Executive Board. Deb will share tips, benefits, and ways to prepare in time for the certification exams being held in conjunction with next month's regional conference. Deb is a business leader with more than 30 years of experience in public and private companies and nonprofits. She's led high-performing communication teams in healthcare, manufacturing, insurance, financial services, and higher education, among others. Known as a voice of calm in the midst of chaos, Deb has earned a reputation as a trusted strategist and advisor to boards and C-suite executives, operations, and other organizational stakeholders. Before we begin, we do have a couple housekeeping notes. I'd like to introduce Amy Miller, Region Finance Chair and our Tech Associate for this webinar. Amy will review a few quick points to help you gain the most from this experience. Amy?
Thank you, Greg. If you would like to watch today's webinar in full screen mode, then mouse to the top right portion of your screen and you'll see 4 small arrows. Click on that symbol to enter or exit full screen mode. During the presentation, if you'd like to send us a comment or question for discussion afterwards, please use the chat button in the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. Just mouse down to the bottom of your screen and your toolbar will appear, including the chat button. If any of you have joined with others watching in the same room using a single connection, that's great. If that's your situation, we ask that you kindly let us know how many at your location or have joined. Do that by using the chat tool, please, just for our records. After the presentation, Greg will moderate a brief opportunity for Deb to answer attendee questions that come in via the chat, and we may also have time for live questions. If you'd like to join the conversation later, right now we're showing some thoughts that may spur ideas for you. Also, today's webinar is being recorded. As a registered attendee, you will receive the following: a link to our very brief survey as you leave the webinar. Please take a moment to respond so we can keep making improvements. And you'll also get an email with links to the recording of today's webinar and registration information for our October webinar. And now, back to Greg.
Thank you, Amy. One more quick note. We hope today's webinar whets your appetite for a visit to Detroit next month, when our regional conference takes place in the Motor City, September 22nd through 24th. You can register today at iabcheritageconference.com. Prior to the conference, we will host a certification exam on Saturday, September 21st from 2 to 5 p.m. Now, let's get started. Deb, take it away.
Thanks, Greg. Let me just get my screen up here and we will be ready to go. So I hope everyone can see that screen. Thank you, Amy, Greg, and Heritage Region for inviting me to join you today to talk about certification. I've been an SCMP since we've had SCMPs through the GCCC and have quite a background with our certification program. So I wanted to just start and share a little bit about my own certification journey because it's perhaps a little bit different than most. As you heard in the intro in my bio, I have more than 30 years experience as a professional communicator. I've worked across multiple disciplines in my career, from marketing communications to PR, IR, employee communications, crisis management, a little bit of everything. I've been very active in professional associations my entire career, and I've been an IABC member since 1992, originally joining in the Heritage Region, matter of fact. So when the certification program came around, I was really comfortable that I had the skills and the knowledge to pass the test. I had for a long time wanted to achieve some level of accreditation or certification. That had been a personal goal of mine for a long time. But I was a little bit challenged with either going after the ABC, the old IABC accreditation, or PRSA's accreditation. For me, the challenge was the portfolio requirement, because much of the work I've done over my career was confidential material and I couldn't even share it for something like that. So it was just a challenge for me, but I know I'm good at multiple choice tests. And so when IABC announced that they were launching the certification program back in, I believe, 2014, I got pretty excited about that, and I was ready to move forward with the process as soon as it was available. And in fact, I was amongst the first to apply for and sit for first the CMP exam back in 2015, I believe. I've been a CMP for a while. And then the first SCMP exam in 2017. I actually sat with the first class for SCMP. In between those things, I got so excited about the program that I volunteered to join the GCCC as a volunteer on the council to help advance the certification program, and ended up being chairman of the organization here a couple of years ago. But one of the things that I like best about certification for myself as well, that I've done over the last few years, is the fact that certification requires me to maintain my skills and stay current on what's going on with our profession and with technology. Really challenges me to continue to stay current in order to maintain my certification. So what is the GCCC anyway? Well, the Global Communication Certification Council, or the GCCC, is the organizing body that was created by IABC, but is very independent of IABC. And it was created as an autonomous governing body for this global communication certification program. It is the only global communication certification program in existence. And so the purpose of the council itself really is to create and maintain this internationally recognized standard of excellence for communicators. And it's based on a global understanding of key communications principles and job competencies, and not just for those of us here in the United States or in North America, but really looking at a global standard of what are the kinds of skills and competencies that a communicator needs, regardless of their country of residence or where they work. And so the GCCC really is there to help advance our profession and serve the profession by creating this process and availability to be able to credential communicators to be able to go out and say, you know, I represent a global standard. I know my profession, I know my job, I'm very competent. Here's the proof. I have attained a global communications certification. And it is important to note, though, that while the old ABC accreditation program was sponsored by IABC, and the GCCC is sponsored by IABC, it operates completely independently. It has a separate council, a separate board, and operates independently of IABC. GCCC offers you two different levels of certification right now. One is for professionals a little earlier in their career, and that would be the CMP, or Certified Communication Management Professional. And that's really for professionals who are a few years into their careers, they're starting to get established, looking to advance their career and really demonstrate their competence in all of these global standard areas of professional practice. For those who are a little bit further along in their career, they might be a manager or director level or higher in their organizations, and really providing more strategic level communications advice to their organization and to the leadership. You would probably want to pursue the SCMP, or the Strategic Communication Management Professional. And both of these programs have been designed to conform to ISO standards. And for those of you who are familiar, this was a big driving force for IABC when the GCCC was founded. is that we really wanted to be able to deliver a certification program that was international in nature, because nothing like that existed before. And ISO, the International Standards Organization, was really the platform that organizations and professions, not just communications, but a lot of different professions really seek to get that ISO standard for their certifications. It's really the benchmark for excellence in certifying professionals. So why get certified anyway? Well, it gives you a competitive advantage. Not unlike the education that you've attained to get where you are with your career today, if you're able to go out and demonstrate to your employer and to potential employers, look, I know my stuff, I can prove it. It gives you a competitive advantage against people out there that you're competing with that are not certified. For those of you maybe familiar with the IABC program, was very popular not only in the US but also up in Canada, and the program had grown to the point where many Canadian employers were demanding accreditation. They wouldn't hire individuals that didn't have those letters behind their name. And studies from the Bureau of Labor Statistics and from other places have already proven that employers look for certified professionals. It gives them that higher measure of confidence the person that they're hiring is ready and able to really do the job. Certified professionals earn more money too, which is very nice, right? We earn an average of 18% more than people that don't hold certification, and that's according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And we're more likely, once we're certified, to get more frequent pay raises and to be promoted more frequently than our peers who've not achieved certification. It can also mean more job satisfaction and career satisfaction for you. I mean, I certainly know that I can say that for myself. You may be thinking, why would someone with 30 plus years experience want to go through the process of getting certification? Well, it was really for my own professional satisfaction and personal satisfaction more than anything, and demonstrating to myself and to my clients that I know my stuff, right? I'm very self-satisfied that I was able to move forward and do that. So I get a real sense of achievement out of being able to do that. You earn a little extra status amongst your peers. Is that something that is important to you? People who are certified professionals, at least within IABC, we are recognized as that at all the different events that we attend and the things that we do within our professional association. And it also helps justify investing in yourself and your own professional development as you move through your career. So let's talk a little bit about certification versus accreditation. And this is a question that's come up quite a bit over the last couple of years as the program has rolled out. So the old accreditation program, let's talk about that. The old IABC program really measured skills and experience. You had to take a test, but you also had to go through a series of interviews and present a portfolio that demonstrated the work that you had done up to that point. The certification, by contrast, is a measure of your knowledge and not just your experience, right? And so the certification has defined this common body of business communication knowledge. It ties directly to IABC's global standard, and it's looking for your knowledge and experience in 6 key areas. First and foremost is ethics. Followed by strategy and your skills and knowledge in how to develop communication strategy. Analysis and measurement, very important. Context, can you present messaging within the appropriate context of what it is you're trying to drive and achieve with your communications. Engagement, finally, are you actually engaging your audiences and driving behavioral changes and the kinds of actions that you want to come out of those communications? And finally, are you consistent? And so while the old accreditation, again, measured your skills and experience at a set point in time, certification is measuring your knowledge. It's a much more objective measure. And we had to do that for ISO, right? ISO did not allow the subjective measure of sitting for interviews with individuals or trying to assess people's work portfolios and the things that they've done in the past. Those are very subjective measures. And ISO requires a consistent objective measure. And that's why, rather than the portfolios and the interviews, you have to take an exam. That's an objective measure of your knowledge. Again, you're demonstrating through taking and passing this exam that you have a deep level of knowledge and expertise within the communication professionals. Again, ethics, strategy, analysis, context, engagement, and consistency. And that you understand the global standard for communications professionals. And so you're going to be tested on all these different domains that are tied to these 6 core principles of communications excellence. The application requirements for a CMP vary slightly. You can either have a minimum of 8 years of professional experience in a communications discipline, plus 40 hours of professional training, or 6 years of professional experience, plus 2 years of formal education and 40 hours of recent training. The SCMP, by contrast, requires that you have a minimum of 11 years experience and at least 20 hours of recent training, and also have to submit a letter of recommendation as part of your application process. One of the most common questions that comes up is what exactly counts as training and how do you document that? Training can be a number of things. It can be attending a professional conference like the IABC Heritage Region Conference or the IABC World Conference or other professional conferences. It can be formal online training programs, either through colleges, universities, or other professional associations. So there's a wide variety of options out there for different kinds of trainings that you might have taken or want to take that are very easy to document that will qualify for these hours of required training for your application for either level of certification. The exam itself is an electronic proctored exam. A lot of people have asked whether or not they can take the exam from their home computer or from their office computer. And unfortunately, ISO requires that it be a proctored exam. And so that's why we have to offer the exam at various sites worldwide throughout the year. You get 3 hours for the test. It's 100 multiple choice questions, and those are based on a detailed practice analysis that the GCCC used that identified various domains of practice, the kinds of tasks that are performed in those domains, and the knowledge needed to be proficient at those. It's a rigorous test. I can tell you, having gone through both the CMP and the SCMP exams, they are tough tests, and they're intended to really set a high bar for those who earn that certification. Now, if you're a good test taker, you shouldn't have a lot of problem. The pass bar is typically somewhere around the 70 percentile. It does vary depending on the number of people that sit the exam in a given year, but typically if you get around 70 questions right, give or take, you're going to pass the test. These are the domains that you really need to be very well versed in order to sit the exam successfully. So for the CMP, you need to be very well versed and well read in communication ethics, right? We need to know how to do the right things. Research and analysis, very important. You need to know how to conduct primary and secondary research, how to analyze data and draw conclusions from that data. You need to understand strategy and engagement. Again, we talked about those as core competencies. But understanding strategy. Now, at the CMP level, it isn't necessarily about being able to write and develop the strategy, but more being able to understand and execute on it. Consistency and strategic implementation, another important domain. And finally, measurement. And so of these 5 domains, this is the place where the test questions come from. So, and if you look on the GCCC website at gcccouncil.org, it really dives into a lot more detail if you get into the handbook about what percentage of each of these domains make up the test. Because there's not 20 questions for each domain. For some, there's only a few questions. For some, there's many more, depending on its level of relevance and importance as part of your professional practice. Now for SCMP, obviously with a few more years of experience under your belt, you not only have to have mastered these 5 business communication domains, but in addition to that, you need to be very proficient at leadership, managing teams, advising senior leadership teams on strategy. You have to have experience and know-how in managing teams, how to develop a strategy, not just execute upon it. We look for you to be innovative, and innovation again ties back to that constantly keeping our knowledge and our skill set up to date through the maintenance and the training and education that's required to maintain your certification. Even more about ethics more broadly and not just communication ethics as part of this domain. And then finally, having a strong knowledge of reputation management. And along with reputation management comes crisis communication. And there are a number of questions related to crisis communication with the reputation management domain for the SCMP. Sorry. Winding down here just to talk a little bit about maintenance and renewal. So you've worked hard, you've applied for accreditation, you sat the test, you've earned your professional certification. Congratulations. Now you've got to maintain it on an annual basis. And the reason that maintenance is required, again, going back to that ISO requirement, that certification requires that you be able to demonstrate on a regular basis that you are continuing to learn and grow as a professional year after year. So you're learning about new technologies, or broadening your skills in another area of business communication that you might not work very regularly in. For example, you work in corporate communications, and so maybe you expand your knowledge in the area of marketing communications or investor relations in order to continually broaden your knowledge base. And so each year, in order to maintain certification, you need to earn 40 points. And this is all done on the honor system. You submit information and documentation for what you've done throughout the year to earn these points and maintain your certification. And you have, you can have at least 3 of these categories. You can certainly have more, but professional reading, for example. So reading new books on public relations or marketing or crisis communications will qualify for some points towards maintenance. Attending a recognized training or course of study, that might be, again, a university-sponsored program, or it might be through the IABC Academy and earning a certificate, such as the Business Acumen Certificate that's available from the IABC Academy. And in fact, just to give the Academy a good plug there, much of the content of the IABC Academy now is geared towards helping you study and learn and prepare for the certification exams. So for those of you who are thinking about, well, how do I get ready to take this test? I encourage you to go have a look at the IABC Academy, because there are a lot of different offerings in there that are going to help you prepare to take the test. Attending professional events and conferences. If you do webinars, or you're attending a regular chapter meeting that has a lunch and learn or a dinner learn meeting, right? As long as you have documentation of those things, those hours count towards your maintenance. Get involved in the GCCC, which is one of the ways that I was able to earn points for a couple of years towards my maintenance by volunteering on the GCCC. If you mentor or coach, and that's communications mentoring or communications coaching, For example, maybe you volunteer for another nonprofit and you lend your communications expertise to another nonprofit as a mentor, coach, or volunteer. That kind of experience counts towards maintenance. If you have a leadership role in IABC or PRSA or any other professional association, those volunteer hours in that leadership role can earn you points towards maintaining your certification. And for those of you out there who might be academics or studying for an advanced degree, if you conduct and publish original research, or if you publish other types of publications, those kinds of things also count. So as you can see, there's a lot of different ways that you can do things through the year to earn those 40 points. It's not nearly as daunting as it might sound. And for myself, I know typically, just because I'm so busy with all these different things, it typically takes me less than 6 months to accumulate my 40 points. So you don't have to scramble at the end of the year trying to find your points if you're a busy professional and you're participating in various things out in your community and within your profession. So with that, I'm going to kind of wrap up my comments, and I'm going to throw it back to Greg, and we're going to open the floor and we're going to answer some questions that we've received, and also the floor to some of the questions you might have now. So at that, Greg.
Thanks so much, Deb, for bringing these insights to us. And now let's entertain your questions. As Deb indicated, right now on the screen, you should see some things to think about that we shared at the beginning of the program. I'm going to begin with some questions that came in via the chat, and hopefully people will be able to formulate some additional questions while we go through this. Okay, Deb, the first question we had is, where can I locate the IABC Handbook of Organizational Communication?
Oh, this is a great question, guys. The IABC Handbook of Organizational Communication is something that used to exist, and quite honestly, it doesn't exist today, but it's coming back. And the handbook was something that was created 25 plus years ago and really was considered the Bible for professional communicators within IABC. In fact, I still have the book that I bought back in the early 90s. But there's been so much demand for this book that the International Executive Board has actually launched a project to resurrect the handbook and bring it back in an electronic format. That's the good news. The bad news is it's going to take a couple of years because it's going to have to be completely rewritten from scratch. And so we have to start by really putting together the outline of what that book needs to contain. Then we've got to recruit the experts to write the material for the book and put it together. But it is something that's going to come back. And so stay tuned. It's going to be a little while, but it will be a great resource for members and non-members alike.
Okay. Thank you, Deb. Here's a question, sort of a follow-up on that. I have the older version, the green cover of the handbook.
Yeah.
Sufficient version for review for the exam?
You know, again, I don't know that I'd rely a whole lot on the Handbook of Organizational Communication for certain things. I certainly wouldn't rely on it in terms of technologies and the ways that technologies have changed how we do our work now in the 21st century. But there are certainly some good foundational things in all the old editions of the handbook that are still relevant today. But again, I think I would push back and encourage everyone to take advantage of the IABC Academy.
Okay. Here's another question. Do the training hours need to happen within a specific time period, or is it throughout your experience? I think you mentioned they can happen over the course of the year, right?
If you're talking about the training required to apply for certification, I believe it's required that the training has taken place within the prior 2 years for SCMP, and I think it's a little bit more liberal for the CMP. And then going forward for maintenance, it's everything that's been done in that year from the time that you were certified till the time you come up for renewal. So for example, if I got certified today on August 7th, my certification would expire next year on August 31st. And so it will run through the end of the month in the year following the date that you earned certification.
Okay, thank you. Another question came up. Where and when will additional exams take place in the Northeast? And as a follow-on question there, we have a question that when will the 2020 exam dates be available?
There's nothing else scheduled for the Northeast right now. If you go to GCCC Council or gcccouncil.org, there is a page on the website that lists all the exams that are scheduled right now. And so let me just explain how tests get scheduled. GCCC does not decide where tests are going to be hosted. IABC chapters throughout the world apply to host an exam. So for example, the exam is going to be held at the Heritage Region Conference next month. The Heritage Region applied to host the test to the GCCC and was accepted to host that exam. And so everything that's scheduled now is out there. And so if you're a member of the Boston chapter or the Richmond chapter or Cincinnati, and you'd like to see your chapter host an exam, I encourage you to talk to the leadership team, because GCCC only needs about 3 or 4 people to sit the test, and they will come in and approve that, and you can host the exam for your chapter specifically. So if you want to do some professional development within your chapter and form a certification group of people that want to work together and study together to sit the test, you can apply to have the exam hosted at your chapter with just a few people.
Okay. Do you have to be a chapter member to take the exam?
No, in fact, you do not have to be a member of IABC at all. Whereas the old ABC accreditation required you to maintain IABC membership, again, tying back to ISO, you do not have to be a member of IABC in order to apply for certification.
Your timing on bringing up ISO is perfect. Has the ISO approved the CMP yet? How about the SCMP? And if you can provide any status on that if it hasn't been approved.
I can. The approval, the application for CMP is in process. It's a very rigorous process with the ISO, and it actually takes up to 18 months from the time that you submit the application before you go through all of the audits and reviews and finally earn that ISO. And so CMP is in process. We are optimistic that we are going to earn that ISO on the CMP program by the end of the year. And then we have to start with the SCMP. We've just now, you have to have at least 2 years worth of history before you can apply for it. So since SCMP just had its 2-year anniversary 2 months ago in June, now we'll be able to apply for the SCMP certification once we finish up with CMP. And we actually expect SCMP to go quite a bit more quickly than CMP did, because it relies on the same set of policies and governance that CMP does.
Okay. On the related topic, I just completed my master's degree in professional communications. Congratulations.
Yes.
Enough to be considered training. I haven't had time in the past 2 years to do much more than work and study.
Absolutely. You've earned a master's degree. That absolutely qualifies as training.
Okay, great. Along the same lines, what's the thinking behind requiring current education and pro bono work for those of us with full-time jobs, families, and 20 years of experience?
Great question. And just going back to what I talked about there, the difference between the old accreditation and an ISO qualified certification. This kind of certification requires that you stay current in the profession, right? And that's why it requires current education and that you are constantly learning new things and expanding your skills and knowledge. Pro bono work is not required to either earn a certification or to maintain it, but pro bono work is one more avenue that you can use to submit for those hours that are required to maintain. Those of us with full-time jobs, families, and 20 years of experience. Well, that's almost all of us, minus the experience part. But again, certification is a living, breathing thing. And even though you have 20 years of experience, I have 35, that's probably enough experience and knowledge to easily apply for and pass the test. But again, it's about staying current in the profession moving forward.
Okay, then the one more question come in via chat, and then we have someone raise their hand on the live conversation. So the question about, actually real quick, the question about the cost of the exam, then I'll get to the question that just came in. How much are the exams to take?
I can't recall off the top of my head. It is a little cheaper if you are an IABC member.
Mm-hmm.
Application is the less expensive part of it, and then I believe it's $400 or $500. It's not particularly expensive to go through the process, and a lot of people that work in the corporate arena or in larger organizations, typically their companies will pay for that.
Okay. Then this one question just came in. I've been in the comms industry for almost 20 years. Would you recommend pursuing CMP prior to attempting the SCMP exam?
Not necessarily. What I would suggest to is go to the handbook and look over that handbook that really dives a little bit deeper into those areas of professional practice that are part of the test. It depends on what you've been doing for 20 years. Now, if you've been a graphic designer for 20 years, you might not have enough background in some of the other communication disciplines to be ready for SCMP. But if you've got management level, director level experience, broader based experience in the profession, you might be ready for the SCMP. But I would go back and look at that manual on the GCCC Council website to learn a little bit more detail there.
Okay, thank you, Deb. I don't see any more questions in the chat right now.
I do see one.
Oh, what's that?
When you take the exam, when do you know if you pass, fail?
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that one. I apologize.
Yeah, well, typically within 24 hours. And in fact, I think we've gotten it to the point now where I think you'll know by the end of the day. You won't have to wait days or weeks to find out whether or not you passed. You know pretty quickly.
Okay. Amy, if you can unmute everyone's mic. I see some people raising their hand with questions. We can certainly still take them via the chat, but if you'd like to ask your question directly to Deb, feel free.
Yeah, we got plenty of time.
Amy, are we unmuted?
Sorry about that. Everyone should have received the ability to unmute themselves.
Okay.
And I started talking without unmuting myself. A nice experience I had this past February when I was at the IABC Leadership Institute. A colleague I knew her, but I didn't know she was taking the exam, happened to walk by me when I was sitting on my computer in a lounge area, and I saw her go by, and I was about to say hello, and she's looking at her phone, and all of a sudden her mouth drops open and her hands go up, and she's holding onto her phone, and she had just come out of the exam room, and just a few minutes later she knew she had passed. She was so excited.
Awesome.
Okay. Natalie, if you want to unmute your mic and ask your question, or if you had a comment. Okay, we'll come back to that. Another question came in. The practice test for the SCMP has questions on advertising and media buying. How big a part of the actual test are these areas?
Great question, Joy. Not huge, right? There's a few questions in there. And again, the test is across a very broad base of communication disciplines. So there's a little bit in there about people who work in advertising and marketing communications and corporate communications and employee communications and investor relations and crisis communication. there's a few questions across all of those areas. And so what I would say there, though, is if you don't have any background experience in advertising and media buying, you know, you can certainly do a little bit of reading to help prepare for that. But again, it's that somewhere around that 70 questions correct mark to pass the certification exam. And so if you miss a handful of questions on an area of practice that you're not familiar or experienced in, I wouldn't get too worried about that. And I see we've got some more questions coming up. Having trouble unmuting. Are there practice tests online anywhere? Yes, there are on gcccouncil.org. Do the tests include writing assignments? No, it is strictly a multiple choice test.
Okay, with nothing in chat, and everyone's lines should be unmuted if they can open up their mics and ask a question directly if they'd prefer. I will take that silence as a probably not.
Well, guys, if you think of more questions between now and whenever, don't hesitate to reach out to me, give me a call, send me an email. I'm more than happy to talk certification at any time with anyone. I will be at the Heritage Region Conference next month. If you'd like to sit down and chat, I'll buy the wine, and would be happy to sit and talk to you anytime and talk certification. But I do see Wendy Tulo. She has a question, had a question.
Oh yeah, Wendy, her email is on the last slide. I promise we'll get it to you.
Yep.
All right, thanks, Deb. It's been great talking, but I'd like to wrap up the conversation. And I wanted to share some quick information for everyone as we get ready to wrap up. Our webinar series takes a brief hiatus in September. We hope to see you all at a regional conference. Again, for details on the conference or to register, go to iabcheritageconference.com. Our next webinar takes place on Wednesday, October 23rd. Connie Fike, a past Silver Quill Award winner and experienced communicator from the IABC Greater Cincinnati chapter, will present on the topic, Communicating to a Challenging Audience. You'll have an opportunity to take in real-life experiences and practical tips for meeting business goals by reaching and motivating audiences who are ambivalent or even downright belligerent. And before I do the final slide, Wendy mentions a quick question, having a quick question. Wendy, do you want to type your question via the chat? Deb, it looks like the speaker mentioned something about submitting a portfolio, which I wasn't clear about.
Oh, okay. You don't have to. A simple answer to that question. The old ABC program required a portfolio. Certification does not.
Okay, perfect. Oh, no worries. Glad we could help there, Wendy. All right, I want to make sure you're aware of a few things as we part company. First, please complete the participant survey. It'll open when you exit. If you have any questions about the webinar or the IABC Heritage Region, please email them to communication@iabcheritage.com. Here's that email address. You can reach Deb at dhileman@crisisconsultant.com or search Deb Hileman on social media channels. To learn about IABC membership benefits, go to iabc.com/membership. Register for the conference at iabcheritageconference.com. And you can apply for certification at https://GCCCouncil. Where'd it go? gcccouncil.org/get-certified-now. Thanks everyone for attending and enjoy your afternoon.